Atheist Nomads episode 354. What even is a religion?
The podcast you're about to listen to includes cursing and talking about hoo-haws. Please be advised.
Welcome to another episode of Atheist Nomads. I am Dustin, and joining me is Lauren.
Hello. My hoo-ha is fine.
Very nice. And I'm doing better with the issues I was having downstairs.
Yeah?
Had to follow up with the urologist over telehealth, which took all of 2 minutes.
That's
3
the
minutes.
new normal. That would have taken you an hour, maybe more.
Oh, right, because
to go into an office.
If I'd had to go into an office, because one of the things, my appointment was scheduled for 3:50. He didn't get to me until it was 4:10, so 20 minutes late. If that had been in the office, then yeah, I would have gotten there on time. They would have wanted to take urine from me because it's a urologist office, and then talk to the nurse, get all the screening stuff, vitals checked, all of that.
Yeah, it kind of makes you wonder why they do all that.
To bill insurance. Billable charges.
That's such bullshit.
It's all about billable charges.
Yeah, making an office visit rather than just a consultation. So
instead, this was, 3 minutes video conference, seeing how I was working out. And the ibuprofen course he had me on, 3 ibuprofen 3 times a day for 2 weeks seems to have resolved the inflammation issues.
Nice.
And apparently, from talking to him, this is a very common thing to happen with people who have testicles.
Oh, okay.
Where just every so often you get some nondescript, no obvious cause inflammation in that region, and actually doing enough ibuprofen to actually get the anti-inflammatory effects for a prolonged period of time usually helps. When it doesn't, then they have to try and do antibiotics. But if all the urine tests come back negative, then
they're just throwing shit at the wind at that point.
Then that's just starting to throw stuff at you.
Your biopsy after that, I guess. I don't know, but yeah, it'll be fine.
And realistically, it's probably one of those with that kind of inflammation that, they throw antibiotics at it, which doesn't actually do anything. It just recovers on its own.
Yeah.
And it's just keeping you from complaining because they are doing things.
Yep. They're not just sending you home.
Yeah.
Although sometimes you wish that they would. You really wish that they would just be honest. Say, I'm sorry, there's nothing we can do. If it gets worse, let us know. Sometimes they do that, but not often enough, I don't think. I think people are we're too eager for a diagnosis.
Mm-hmm.
We want to know what's wrong. And sometimes there just isn't a clear answer.
Right. That's one of the reasons why the Trump administration is pushing for evidence that China maliciously did something wrong with the pandemic.
Yeah, you want to be able to blame somebody for this.
And they don't want it to just be because of the meat markets. They want it to be because of something super malicious. So they're trying to find evidence that they're
looking for biological weapons?
They're trying to find out a way to blame the laboratory in Wuhan, China, that was studying coronaviruses in bats to try to figure out which one will be the next possible pandemic. Trying to find evidence that they actually weren't just studying it, but were trying to figure out how to make it become the next pandemic.
Yeah, not everybody is a Bond villain.
Especially scientists.
I don't know. You get paid high enough, anybody's willing to let something slip, but that just probably isn't the case. The chances, like I said, that sounds like a Bond film.
Yeah, we're talking Dr.
Those people
Blofeld.
Get paid shit.
We're talking Blofeld level issue. Level of malfeasance.
Ooh, good word.
This is just something that
was going to happen.
Yeah.
Because that's what they were predicting, and then it happened.
And because of humans eating bushmeat in Africa and much of Asia, and let's be honest, game meat in the U.S. is bushmeat.
Yeah.
Bats are right now seems to be where the pandemics are coming from. And if you go back far enough, the other current pandemic that we still have on the books is HIV. That is still a pandemic, according to the World Health Organization, and definitely still is because it hasn't stopped spreading.
Right.
Treatments have gotten better. Detection's gotten better. Infection rates have gone down, but it still is spreading like crazy. And that one crossed into humans from game meat as well, or bush meat.
Yeah.
Difference between bush meat and game meats basically, are you doing that to keep from dying, or are you doing that because you want to for fun?
Game. Yeah. Fun.
Yeah. We're lucky in the U.S. that we haven't had similar issues.
There's a lot of money going into making sure that people don't take home sick deer or sick elk.
True.
That is constantly being monitored. So it's not luck so much as really good government intervention.
Yeah, that is correct. Yeah. And they do a lot of wildlife management of the game species and only allow you to hunt specific species that are being monitored appropriately to make sure it doesn't cause a pandemic.
Right.
Whereas in China and parts of Africa, you have...
Or just wipe out a family. I mean, it doesn't take much.
But yeah, in China and parts of Africa and much of Asia, it's go get animals and bring them back alive to markets where they'll either become food or some kind of bullshit medicine.
Or pets.
Yeah.
I'd much rather have a pet pangolin than to have medicine pangolin. Poor pangolins.
But this week is actually supposed to be a break from the news.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, we are not going to be talking about news more, but we are going to be talking about Asia.
Okay.
But before we get to that, I do need to get into part of, what's going on with Dustin Off the Degree. Because I started off this series with it of doing the list of the largest religious bodies / organizations. And I've had some misgivings about the list, but it was just an interesting way of getting down to actually something identifiable as an actual thing to talk about.
Yeah.
That included some that most people in the US and, English speaking world don't know about.
Yeah.
So
those are the interesting ones.
Right. So it was worth it for that. And that was despite the fact that the list from, you can't find that list anywhere other than adherence.com, and you can't find it at adherence.com anymore because they lost their domain and it's now a payday lender.
Oh boy.
So it's gone. Now I also know their numbers were outdated. So I'm guessing it was somebody's side project that has been kind of not doing much, and then realistically with the pandemic that probably cut the funding, and then it's gone.
Yeah.
So yay. But yeah, the statistics they had were not the most accurate.
P.S. This is also why you never use websites as resources or cited sources in any kind of paper. Well, you shouldn't anyway.
Yes and no.
If nobody can validate your source because the website gets shut down, then you're screwed.
If it's a serious paper that you're publishing, then you should.
It did a lot of websites in college, and I'm just thinking back. I'm like, God, they should not have allowed that.
At that point, everybody was still trying to figure out what to do with stuff on the internet, and now that schools have a better idea on what's valid and what's not, and I don't know what's considered valid and what isn't now.
Yeah.
But yeah, so adherence.com is gone. The list is gone, and I'm okay with that because, yes, there was some interesting groups of surprisingly large numbers that were interesting to talk about, and I do have some of the more interesting ones still written down to definitely talk about. Not necessarily all of them in that order that they had there. But just some of the issues with the numbers they had was like the third largest. So you got Roman Catholicism is the largest religious group. Yeah, that's a definable group because it is a religion with a single head.
Yeah, but they count whole countries.
Oh, their numbers are bullshit.
Oh, okay. But that for what is a religion It is definitely religion.
It is definitely a religious body, group, organization, whatever term you want to use. Roman Catholicism definitely is. Number 2 was Sunni Islam. Sunni Islam is not an organization.
Okay, but it is a religion.
Equivalent to Protestantism.
Yeah.
That's not a definable group.
Okay, but it is...
If your list is the biggest religious divisions, yes. If your list is of the largest religious organizations, Sunni Islam is not an organization.
Okay. Gotcha.
There is no central structure or even committee or anything like that. Shia was also pretty high up. Likewise, not an organization. Was interesting to talk about them, but they aren't actually religious organizations.
Is there an Islamic religious organization of any sort then?
Tons of them. Thousands of them.
Okay.
If not tens of thousands. Just like there are thousands, if not tens or hundreds of thousands of Protestant denominations of Christianity.
Okay.
But they're not, it's not, none of them, unless you got, with the exception of like the national groups when they have some countries do have those, where it's sponsored by the government and everybody has to be a part of that particular school of imams, then yeah, that would be where you actually have a large group, but then you're getting the same kind of stuff as you get with state churches, where the numbers are kind of fishy because it's the population of a country. Eastern Orthodox Christianity they had as number 3, which is cool, except the Russian Orthodox Church severed ties with the See of Constantinople, so if they aren't in communion with the ecumenical patriarch, then they aren't actually part of Eastern Orthodoxy. And whether or not Eastern Orthodoxy is even really a thing equivalent to, say, the Roman Catholic Church or, say, the Seventh-day Adventist Church or Latter-day Saints, Eastern Orthodoxy isn't. Each national church would be the more equivalent one to each of those. Same issue was with you have that same issue with the Anglican Communion, where there is a communion that is where all of the leaders can come together. They all get along. They're all on the same team, but it's not a unified organization. Okay.
So okay. And the big thing there is bureaucracy. Basically, you don't have a tiered system of higher ups that make the rules.
Yeah, there's that, but even just if you've got a shared bureaucracy, it's an identifiable organization. If there is no central bureaucracy, then what is it that you're looking at?
Yeah.
There has to be some kind of central bureaucracy to really be an organization.
Right. So the title of the episode should be, "What is a religious organization?"
Oh, no. We're getting...
Oh, tip of the iceberg here.
Yes, this is just the tip of the iceberg.
Speaking of which, I should have had ice cream for this.
Yes. No. So then there's you got that part. And then, so the list had a lot of problems. And I'm kind of okay with some of those problems. Like, I'm glad we got to talk about the Shinto Association, because...
That was cool.
It's the largest Shinto group with the most shrines. The numbers they reported for it are complete bullshit.
Yeah.
And if you're going with actual numbers for actual people who would say that they are a part of those shrines that are part of that organization, and people who would even know that they are affiliated with that organization, then you'd be getting into numbers smaller than the vast majority of the big Protestant groups.
Yeah. Every neighborhood has a shrine. I mean, you start nitpicking there. And
and even like the Anglican Communion has some of those same issues with, they list more people as members, and the Catholic Church has this problem too, where they list members who don't necessarily really have any affiliation with that.
They don't set foot in a church. They don't pay money to that church, but they happen to be either geographically or otherwise included in the list.
And it's where you have to go to get married. and get the proper paperwork for your baby.
Yeah.
And do the things that people in your culture do. And it's one of the reasons why people... I've seen some good arguments that the freedom of religion in the U.S. is why the U.S. is so much more religious than countries with state religions. It made it so that being a part of a church was a choice and required active participation, as opposed to, by default, you are a part of X.
Yeah. Now they just need to start looking at those non-attendees as legitimate people.
So a couple down the list from where we left off was Jushi. Jushi is very interesting to even be on the list, let alone as one of the largest religious groups in the world.
So according to this list, it's North Korea's state religion.
Yes.
But North Korea officially does not have a state religion.
North Korea is officially an atheistic state.
Exactly.
So not only does it
Dirty
not have...
communists.
Yeah, not only does North Korea not have a state religion, it is officially anti-religion.
Yes. So, yeah, it is interesting that they would include this. This is an organization of ideology?
It's not. There's no organization.
Oh, okay. So what is it? As best as you could find.
Well, before we get into what it really is, the only people who really think it is a religion are South Korean Christians.
Well, maybe that's who made the list.
And some American evangelicals.
Because they need an enemy?
Because to some people, any ideology is...
Those are the people who claim that atheists are religious because they believe in no God, that there is no God, or some bullshit like that.
Or even the people who don't think it's possible to not believe in God. They think you hate God.
Oh, yeah.
If you're an atheist. Because everybody knows there's a God. And when you have distinctions being made by people with some viewpoints like that, then it can make it hard to have meaningful list. And it makes sense that this was a list that after adherents lost their sight, I couldn't find an equivalent list anywhere else. So, Jushi, what is it? It is the philosophy of self-reliance for North Korea.
Okay.
It is based on Lenin Marxism. So, take Marx's teachings as modified by Lenin, add in some Maoist influence.
Okay.
But not much, because China was pretty weak there early on. Yes, they were able to send an army in to drive the Americans and UN out of North Korea during the Korean War. But after that, they focused on trying to rebuild their country.
They seem to be pretty hands-off. Most things are diplomatic right now, not any more than talk.
And North Korea has always been more aligned with the Soviet Union and Russia than China, especially after the Soviet-Sino split in the 60s, when Mao and Khrushchev, I think, didn't get along. So then North Korea started to develop its own philosophy, the Korean version of communism, as a philosophy for how to live your life. And of course, if you're trying to make the ideas of a German Jew and a Russian Korean, you're going to have to tweak it quite a bit. And the easiest way to tweak it is to bring in some elements of traditional Korean paganism, for lack of a better term for it.
All right.
But
old religion.
But in an atheistic way. And so one of the things they did was they set up the doctrine of the supreme leader. This is more than what you would see for a supreme leader in most places. This is the supreme leader as being infallible, unable to make mistakes.
I know. It just leaves a bad taste in your mouth even saying it. Supreme leader. My God.
Like, we're talking the Pope plus some. And the best...
Imperialistic Japan.
Yeah, I guess.
I mean,
yeah, the Emperor of Japan was the direct descendant of the sun goddess, and
was not fallible. That's the only one I'm familiar with that's close to that. Yeah, and the Pope.
And North Korea would have had a decent idea with what Imperial Japan thought, because they'd been conquered by Imperial Japan, had been a part of the Japanese Empire for 70 years, 60 or 70 years prior to World War II.
Yeah.
And so they had a lot of Japanese influence on that. And so you combine this weird mix of European socialism, Russian Soviet ideology, Japanese imperialism, and some Chinese influence, and repackage it into being very Korean. And you end up getting something that's just disgusting. It's a philosophy around the supreme leader is the only person who can make decisions.
Okay.
So everybody else needs to just do what the supreme leader says and not think about it. And that's because the supreme leader is perfect.
Right.
And cannot make wrong decisions. So whatever the supreme leader says goes, and everybody else just has to follow what the supreme leader says. Doing anything against that is not just criminal, it's a sin. Sort of. But in a way that looks a lot more like the old monarchies, and disobeying a command from the king.
Yeah, it sounds
treason.
Much more medieval.
Yeah. And they've got a stratification in society, but still everybody is supposed to just do what the supreme leader says and are not supposed to think. Very 1984 feeling.
Yeah.
And there is a lot of the philosophy is focused on your duty to the state and your duty to your family.
Okay.
Which is pretty Chinese.
That's a little bit of Confucianism thrown in there.
But I wouldn't call it a religion any more than American exceptionalism or manifest destiny.
Look at the far right in America. They aren't.
It's this weird, and with the far right in America, yeah, you've got this.
We have a supreme leader who, president, who he says one thing one week, he goes back and says the opposite the next week, and they're okay with it because he can't be wrong. So they do these mental gymnastics to make it right. Well, they do the exact same thing over there, right?
But you wouldn't call.
Of course, it's a lot easier when you own the media to make sure those mistakes are never known. Right.
And yeah, we do have there are similarities right now with the modern American right wing, where you've got this blending of evangelical Christianity and conservative political ideology into this singular, disgusting mess that is putting Justin Walker on the DC Circuit Court of Appeals.
You lost me.
I'll
please don't do that. I'm already confused enough by the one thing. I don't need something else thrown in.
Sorry.
You're doing that weird comparison thing again.
No. They're just the modern right wing is taking somebody. Justin Walker is somebody who was made a federal judge 6 months ago and is about to be confirmed for the DC Circuit Court of Appeals, despite having never been inside of a courtroom prior to becoming a judge. He was a pencil pusher in a law firm who liked to write articles arguing for theocracy in America. And because he is all for executive power and more religion in government and more restriction of personal liberty, the right wing loves him. And so, despite being about the same age as us, if not younger,
that's where you get that kind of passion.
Right.
It hasn't been beaten out of you yet.
But he's getting a lifetime appointment on the most powerful circuit court.
Yep.
Because he fits this weird ideology perfectly. And yeah, North Korea, what it has looks more like that than it looks like a church.
Yeah, it's not a church. Just like Confucianism isn't a church.
But there are Confucianistic, there are Neo-Confucianism.
Communism isn't a church.
Communism isn't. But Confucianism is also a weird one because there are Confucian congregations that gather to perform rituals in the exercise of Confucianism.
Okay. Yeah. Those are rare.
And they are trying to form in the process of forming a unified organization to bring the Confucianistic congregations in together.
Okay.
Into a unified...
If you can make a set of values an official religious organization, go for it, I guess. Everybody else thinks they can.
Well, and it's one of the things that I think gets difficult is when you view religion from the Western lens. You're looking at religion from the mindset of somebody who knows what the Roman Catholic Church is, and the Southern Baptist Convention is, and the Mormon Church is, and the Methodist Church, and the Seventh-day Adventist Church. And you know things that are definitely religious groups, and see things that are definitely religious bodies, and Christianity, which is definitely a religion with a God and practices and regular rituals and everybody
bureaucracy
and a central bureaucracy, several central bureaucracies. Looking at not Christianity through that lens does not make sense.
No, it doesn't.
Looking at Confucianism and Juche and Taoism and most of Buddhism is trying to look at those as a religion. Like, I would say realistically, you've got that's kind of a spectrum where on the, Juche is the most not religion of those philosophical models, and Buddhism would be probably the most religious of them. And there's this weird spectrum in between. And in the West, we don't like spectrums. We like defined boxes that you can put things in.
Yeah, like cats.
What?
Cats like to sit in boxes.
Yeah, but they don't like to be put in them.
You have an empty box, cat's going to go in it.
Until you try to close the lid.
Until you try to put it in it. Then no, they're not cool with that. But yeah.
So this is, any list of religious groups that includes Juche as a religious body or organization or anything like that
are probably based in South Korea.
Or are hardcore evangelical. And I know I definitely, I've been looking at that site for probably 15 years. And I have always looked at it taken everything on it with a grain of salt, because there was always a definite evangelical bent to it.
Okay, yeah.
Like my guess was it was run by some evangelicals who are statistics geeks who like to compile numbers and make lists. And I think that's pretty cool. I like compiling numbers and making lists.
There's some interesting lists out there, though, when it comes to religion. I mean, if you Google world's predominant religion, one of the first things that pops up are what are the 12 major religions of the world.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's only 12.
12 major. But then you're going into the larger category of religions versus religious groups, which is a much easier thing to identify. But even then, some people are going to split out Christianity into multiples and split out Islam into multiples. Oh,
I like this one. Christianity is 31.5%. Islam is 23.2%. This is of the world.
Mm-hmm.
Irregular affiliation is 16.3%. Hinduism is 15%. Buddhism is 7.1%. Folk religion is 5.9%. And Judaism is 0.2%. So that's an interesting way of doing it. Just saying generic folk religions.
Yeah.
While the previous list, the 12, included like Shinto, Sikhism, Taoism.
Which, when you're looking at the major world religions, Sikhism is sometimes on the list. Hinduism and Buddhism are always on the list. Sikhism is always on the list. Zoroastrianism is often on the list. Any list that includes Zoroastrianism as a major world religion is looking at it from a historical context. There's only a few 100,000 Zoroastrians left.
Okay.
When you're trying to look at the world's largest religions, Judaism shouldn't be on the list. 0.2%.
Yeah. It's thrown in there as a token.
Yeah. To not be viewed as anti-Semitic.
Yeah. I guess.
And also probably to try to avoid just throwing it in with the folk religions.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Lauren has left us. She is going to bed. But this segues to, in the what is a religion? Like in the U.S., it is very clear that Christianity and Islam and Judaism and Buddhism are religions and recognized as such by the government in any way that matters. Unitarians are also recognized, even though you could easily argue that Unitarians are an organization that used to be a religion and aren't anymore. But historically, they have, started out as definitely a church and are now still a thing. We talked in episode 346 with Monica Miller, who she worked on a case that got humanism recognized as a religion in U.S. prisons. And there have been efforts for the last quite a few years to get humanists recognized as chaplains in the military. And the American Humanist Association, it has a central bureaucracy. It has chapters who hold meetings. It has recognized leaders and people who have been authorized to perform rituals, namely celebrants who do weddings and funerals and the like. They do have texts. They don't view any of them as sacred, but they do have texts. And there are religions that are recognized by the government who do not have sacred texts. It shares features with religions while being definitely not a religion. And there's actually a compelling argument to getting it recognized as equivalent and being worthy of being recognized as one. And when you're looking at like I would say with the, like we were talking about with some of the Eastern philosophies, and are they religions or not? The same holds true with like humanism. Humanist philosophies can be religious and they can be atheistic. And humanist organizations can be religious and they can be atheistic. And it can get it's really weird. The need to, because of the way the U.S. Has privileged religious organizations while having constitutional requirements to have a separation of church and state, has made it so that it needs to be more flexible. In other countries, that's not a concern. In like North Korea would be an example where religion is illegal, so they don't need to worry about that. China only authorizes certain religions. So if you can get the Communist Party of China to say that you are a religion, then you are a religion. It doesn't matter what your religion is. Any philosophical school of thought could potentially be recognized as a religion there. But the way things are in the U.S., it is a lot more complicated. And looking at it from a non-legal standpoint, I would argue that atheism is not a religion, that humanism is not a religion, that philosophical schools of thought are distinct from religion. There's ways that you could push it to where medicine or science could be started to be viewed as religions when that's insane. And you could tweak it to where every club is a religion, and that would be insane. Or we could just clean things up to where it doesn't matter if something's a religion. I think that's a debate that should be best left to sociologists and debated on the internet. And I don't think it's something that governments should even care about. Neutrality towards religion is always the best way to go, and being neutral, governmental neutrality, and make sure that's clear. Governmental neutrality towards religion is always the best way to go, and if governments are truly neutral about religion, then they shouldn't care if your group is a religion or not, and your group being a religion should not grant it any benefits over any other group, and all groups should just be treated the same, regardless of what they are, because it shouldn't fucking matter. And I'm going to leave it there. If you're looking back at past episodes, I suggest you do not click on any of the links back to adherence.com, and I will actually be stripping those out. But that wraps up this long dusting off the degree. All right, and we got a upgrade from one of our patrons, Henry, who is now our top patron. So thank you, Henry. We got more spam comments on YouTube, which is always annoying. We got an off-topic comment about a book that Rich has on the website. Yeah, that might be interesting to look at, but I don't know that I would actually... I know I wouldn't actually end up reading it. Fortunately, I just don't have time. Does sound interesting, though. And Patreon has a change coming up where they are going to be required in some or more states. Well, okay. They have been charging VAT in the EU on patron pledges, and they are going to start on July 1st, charging tax, VAT, or GST for patrons from some places in the US and 17 other countries. I've read the information they have available so far, and Patreon will be announcing this to patrons themselves on June 1st to give them a heads up, but they wanted to give creators an opportunity to let our people know first, and so I'm going to let everybody know. This is the estimates they have is that less than half of all patrons will have sales tax added. And looking at the list of what's going to qualify for getting charged sales tax and what won't, we aren't far off from being able to not have our patrons get charged in almost all states, where the vast majority of states would be no sales tax. And they are going to be basing whether or not they collect sales tax on keywords in the tiers and perks for those tiers. So I will be revamping those between now and July 1st, and I will be taking away bonus content. To be fair, there has been almost no bonus content, so patrons won't be losing anything there. The patron feed will still be of value in the event that I ever end up running advertisements that, well, if I ever run advertisements again, the patron feed would still be of value to get advertising free episodes, but there won't be extra content there. All content will be freely available to everyone. So making pledges to support the podcast is because you like the podcast and you want to support the podcast, not for perks. I know nobody donates to the podcast for perks. People donate to the podcast because they want to support the podcast. So I think that will be, we'll be fine there. And I don't think anybody will want to drop their pledges based on that. And making that change will make it so that people won't be getting charged sales tax when they shouldn't be needing to be. So I think that should be good for everyone. But if you do want to support the show and you are in a position where you can at patreon.com/atheistnomads, or you can go to atheistnomads.com/donate. You could also make a one-time donation at paypal.me/atheistnomads, which you can also find the link to at atheistnomads.com/donate. If you want to get in touch with us, the best way to do so is at atheistnomads.com/contact, or send us an email to contact@atheistnomads.com. There will be a live stream coming up. I almost have the live streaming setup phase 1 done. So when that is the parts are all in, I'll do a test for patrons and then open it up to everybody again. The new setup should be really nice, and I am really looking forward to getting it all going. But yeah, still waiting on a few parts that I've ordered to make it all work well together. So keep on the lookout for that, and check out the Discord community. Link is in the show notes, and I will at some point, hopefully very soon, be adding a short link so you can get to it at atheistnomads.com/discord. That would be very smart. So check that out. I am also tired, so I'm going to call it a night. And remember, not all those who wander are lost.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Atheist Nomads. You can find show notes and contact information at atheistnomads.com. Follow us on Twitter at Atheist Nomads, and like us on Facebook at facebook.com/Atheist Nomads. Please subscribe to the show in iTunes, Stitcher, or your podcatcher of choice, and while you're there, feel free to leave us a review. Theme music is courtesy of Sturdy Fred. Until next time, this has been the Atheist Nomads.